Serpents of Paradise by Edward Abbey. The April mornings are bright, clear, and calm. Not until the afternoon does the wind begin to blow, raising dust and sand in funnel-shaped twisters that spin across the desert briefly, like dancers, and then collapse, whirlwinds from which issue no voice or word except the forlorn moan of the elements under stress. After the reconnoitering dust devils comes the serious wind, the voice of the desert rising to a demented howl and blotting out sky and sun behind yellow clouds of dust, sand, confusion, embattled birds, last year's scrub oak leaves, pollen, the husks of locusts, bark of juniper. Time of the red eye, the sore and bloody nostril, the sand-pitted windshield, if one is foolish enough to drive his car into such a storm. Time to sit indoors and continue that letter which is never finished, while the fine dust forms neat little windows under the edge of the door and on the window sills. Yet the springtime winds are as much a part of the canyon country as the silence and the glamorous distances. You learn after a number of years to love them also. The mornings, therefore, as I started to say and meant to say, are all the sweeter in the knowledge of what the afternoon is likely to bring. Before beginning the morning chores, I like to sit on the sill of my doorway, bare feet planted on the bare ground and a mug of hot coffee in hand, facing the sunrise. The air is gelid, not far above freezing, but the butane heater inside the trailer keeps my back warm. The rising sun warms the front, and the coffee warms the interior. Perhaps this is the loveliest hour of the day, though it's hard to choose. Much depends on the season. In midsummer, the sweetest hour begins at sundown after the awful heat of the afternoon. But now, in April, we'll take the opposite. That hour beginning with the sunrise. The birds, returning from wherever they go in winter, seem inclined to agree. The pinyon jays are whirling in gregarious flocks from one stunted tree to the next and back again. Erratic, exuberant games without any apparent practical function. A few big ravens hang around and croak harsh, clanking statements of smug satisfaction from the rinrock, lifting their greasy wings now and then to probe for lice. I can hear but seldom see the canyon wrens singing their distinctive song from somewhere up on the cliffs, a flute-like ascent, never ascent, of the whole tone scale. Staking out new nesting claims, I understand. Also invisible but invariably present at some indefinable distance are the mourning ducks, whose plaintive calls suggest irresistibly a kind of seeking out, the attempt by separated souls to restore a lost communion. Hello, they seem to say. Who are you? And the reply from a distant quarter, hello, where are you? No doubt this line of analogy must be rejected. It's foolish and unfair to impute to the doves with serious concerns of their own an interest in questions more appropriate to their human kin. Yet their song, if not a mating call or a warning, must be what it sounds like, a brooding meditation on space, on solitude, the game. Other birds, silent, which I have not yet learned to identify, are also lurking in the vicinity, watching me. What the ornithologist terms LGVs, little gray birds, they flit about from point to point on noiseless wings, their origins obscure. As mentioned before, I share the house trailer with a number of mice. I don't know how many, but apparently only a few, perhaps a single family. They don't disturb me and are welcome to my crumbs and leavings. Where they came from, how they got into the trailer, how they survived before my arrival, for the trailer had been locked up for 6 months. Those are puzzling matters I am not prepared to resolve. My only reservation concerning the mice is that they do attract rattlesnakes. I'm sitting on my doorstep early one morning, facing the sun as usual, drinking coffee, when I happen to look down and see almost between my bare feet, only a couple of inches to the rear of my heels, the very thing I had in mind. No mistaking that wedge-like head, that tip of horny, segmented tail peeping out of the coils. He's under the doorstep and in the shade where the ground and air remain very cold. In his sluggish condition, he's not likely to strike unless I rouse him by some careless move of my own. There's a revolver inside the trailer, a huge British Webley 45, loaded, but it's out of reach. Even if I had it in my hands, I'd hesitate to blast a fellow creature at such close range, shooting between my own legs at a living target flat on solid rock 30 inches away. It would be like murder. And where would I set my coffee? My cherry wood walking stick leans against the trailer house wall only a few feet away, but I'm afraid that in leaning over for it, I might stir up the rattler or spill some hot coffee on his scales. Other considerations come to mind. Arches National Monument is meant to be, among other things, a sanctuary for wildlife, for all forms of wildlife. It is my duty as a park ranger to protect, preserve, and defend all living things within the park boundaries, making no exceptions. Even if this were not the case, I have personal convictions to uphold. Ideals, you might say. I prefer not to kill animals. I'm a humanist. I'd rather kill a man than a snake. What to do? I drink some more coffee and study the dormant reptile at my heels. It is not, after all, the mighty diamondback I'm confronted with, but a smaller species known locally as the hornier antler, or more precisely as the faded midget. An insulting name for a rattlesnake, which may explain the faded midget's alleged bad temper. But the name is apt. He is small and dusty looking, with a little knob above each eye, the horns. His bite, though temporarily disabling, would not likely kill a full-grown man in normal health. Even so, I don't really want him around. Am I to be compelled to put on boots or shoes every time I wish to step outside? The scorpions, tarantulas, centipedes, and black widows are nuisance enough. I finish my coffee, lean back, and swing my feet up and inside the doorway of the trailer. At once there is a buzzing sound from below, and the rattler lifts his head from his coils, eyes brightening, and extends his narrow black tongue to test the air. After thawing out my boots over the gas flame, I pull them on and come back to the doorway. My visitor is still waiting beneath the doorstep, basking in the sun, fully alert. The trailer house has 2 doors. I leave by the other and get a long-handled spade out of the bed of the government pickup. With this tool, I scoop the snake into the open. He strikes. I can hear the click of the fangs against steel, the stain of venom. He wants to stand and fight, but I am patient. I insist on hurting him well away from the trailer. On guard, head aloft, that evil slit-eyed weaving head shaped like the ace of spades, tail whirring. The rattler slithers sideways, retreating slowly before me until he reaches the shelter of a sandstone slab. He backs under it. You better stay there, cousin, I warn him. If I catch you around the trailer again, I'll chop your head off. A week later, he comes back. If not him, his twin brother. I spot him one morning under the trailer near the kitchen drain, waiting for a mouse. I have to keep my promise. This won't do. If there are midget rattlers in the area, there may be diamondbacks too, 5, 6, or 7 feet long, thick as a man's wrist, dangerous. I don't want them camping under my house. It looks as though I'll have to trap the mice. However, before being forced to take that step, I'm lucky enough to capture a gopher snake. Burning garbage one morning at the park dump, I see a long, slender, yellow-brown snake emerge from a mound of old tin cans and plastic picnic plates and take off down the sandy bed of a gulch. There's a burlap sack in the cab of the truck, which I carry when plucking Kleenex flowers from the brush and cactus along the road. I grab that in my stick, run after the snake, and corner it beneath the exposed roots of a bush. Making sure it's a gopher snake and not something less useful, I open the neck of the sack and with a great deal of coaxing and prodding get the snake into it. Gopher snake or bull snake has a reputation as the enemy of rattlesnakes, destroying or driving them away whenever encountered. Hoping to domesticate this sleek, handsome, and docile reptile, I release him inside the trailer house and keep him there for several days. Should I attempt to feed him? I decide against it. Let him eat mice. What little water he may need can also be extracted from the flesh of his prey. The gopher snake and I get along nicely. During the day, he curls up like a cat in the warm corner behind the heater, and at night he goes about his business. The mice, singularly quiet for a change, make themselves scarce. The snake is passive, apparently contented, and makes no resistance when I pick him up with my hands and drape him over an arm or around my neck. When I take him outside into the wind and sunshine, his favorite place seems to be inside my shirt, where he wraps himself around my waist and rests on my belt. In this position, he sometimes sticks his head out between shirt buttons for a survey of the weather, astonishing and delighting any tourists who may happen to be with me at the time. The scales of a snake are dry and smooth, quite pleasant to the touch. Being a cold-blooded creature, of course, he takes his temperature from that of the immediate environment, in this case, my body. We are compatible. From my point of view, friends. After a week of close association, I turn him loose on the warm sandstone at my doorstep and leave for a patrol of the park. At noon, when I return, he is gone. I search everywhere beneath, nearby and inside the trailer house, but my companion has disappeared. Has he left the area entirely, or is he hiding somewhere close by? At any rate, I was troubled no more by rattlesnakes under the door. The snake story is not yet ended. In the middle of May, about a month after the gopher snake's disappearance, in the evening of a very hot day, with all the rosy desert cooling like a griddle with the fire turned off, he reappears, this time with a mate. I'm in the stifling heat of the trailer opening a can of beer, barefooted, about to go outside and relax after a hard day watching cloud formations. I happen to glance out the little window near the refrigerator and see two gopher snakes on my verandals engaged in what seems to be a kind of ritual dance. Like a living caduceus, they wind and unwind about each other in undulant, graceful, perpetual motion, moving slowly across a dome of sandstone. Invisible but tangible as music in the passion which joins them. Sexual, combative, both. A shameless voyeur, I stare at the lovers, and then to get a closer view, run outside and around the trailer to the back. Then I get down on hands and knees and creep towards the dancing snakes, not wanting to frighten or disturb them. I crawl to within 6 feet of them and stop, flat on my belly, watching from the snake's eye level. Obsessed with their ballet, the serpents seem unaware of my presence. The two gopher snakes are nearly identical in length and collaring. I cannot be certain that either is actually my former household pet. I cannot even be sure that they are male and female, though their performance resembles so strongly a pas de deux by formal lovers. They intertwine and separate, glide side by side in perfect congruence, turn like mirror images of each other and glide back again, wind and unwind again. This is the basic pattern, but there is a variation. At regular intervals, the snakes elevate their heads, facing one another, as high as they can go, as if each is trying to outreach or overawe the other. Their heads and bodies rise higher and higher, then topple together, and the rite goes on. I crawl after them, determined to see the whole thing. Suddenly and simultaneously, they discover me, prone on my belly a few feet away. The dance stops. After a moment's pause, the two snakes come straight toward me, still in flawless unison, straight towards my face, the forked tongues flickering, their intense, wild yellow eyes staring directly into my eyes. For an instant, I'm paralyzed by wonder, then stung by a fear too ancient and powerful to overcome, I scramble back, rising to my knees. Snakes veer and turn and race away from me in parallel motion, their lean, elegant bodies making a soft hissing noise as they slide over the sand and stone. I follow them for a short distance, still plagued by curiosity, before remembering my place and the requirements of common courtesy. For God's sake, let them go in peace, I tell myself. Wish them luck, and if lovers, innumerable offspring, a life of happily ever after, not for their sake alone, but for your own. In the long, hot days and cool evenings to come, I will not see the gopher snakes again. Nevertheless, I will feel their presence watching over me like totemic deities, keeping the rattlesnakes far back in the brush where I like them best, cropping off the surplus mouse population, maintaining useful connections with the primeval, sympathy, mutual aid, symbiosis, continuity. How can I descend to such anthropomorphism? Easily, but is it, in this case, entirely false? Perhaps not. I am not attributing human motives to my snake and bird acquaintances. I recognize that when and where they serve purposes of mine, they do so for beautifully selfish reasons of their own, which is entirely the way it should be. I suggest, however, that it's a foolish, simple-minded rationalism which denies any form of emotion to all animals but man and his dog. This is no more justified than the Muslims are in denying souls to women. It seems to me possible, even probable, that many of the non-human, undomesticated animals experience emotions unknown to us. What do the coyotes mean when they yodel with the moon? What are the dolphins trying to so patiently to tell us? Precisely what did those two enraptured gopher snakes have in mind when they came gliding toward my eyes over the naked sandstone? If I had been as capable of trust as I am susceptible to fear, I might have learned something new or some truth so very old we all have forgotten it. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. All men are brothers, we like to say, half wishing sometimes in secret it were not true. Perhaps it is true. Is the evolutionary line from protozoan to Spinoza any less certain? That also may be true. We are obliged, therefore, to spread the news, painful and bitter though it may be for some to hear, that all living things on earth are kindred.